It is happening. An economic crisis is on the way. Millions of Americans, including the low-income, Social Security and SNAP beneficiaries, are expected to see their payments delayed. And that's all starting in just a few weeks. Top economists are already warning all Americans to prepare financially for this disaster, which will last them months. The United States is also weeks away from being unable to pay its bills, an event that will likely be accompanied by broad and negative financial consequences for American households, that is. Among the ramifications of a debt ceiling standoff, any payment issued by the federal government, like Social Security, Medicare, tax refunds, military paychecks, and ample others, may be delayed. As an illustration, if the U.S. has just 80 or 90 cents for every dollar it owes, it will be forced to defer to certain payments. There are many unknowns, for example, the length of any delay or if the government will prioritize certain payments. The U.S. has never been in this situation, and the government hasn't issued a public roadmap outlining its response. The U.S. is in this situation due to a political standoff tied to the debt limit. This ceiling is the amount of money the United States is authorized to borrow to pay its bills. The nation runs a budget deficit, meaning it spends more than it makes more. It must therefore borrow money to meet its obligations. Congress periodically raises or temporarily suspends the debt ceiling to avoid the other scenario, which would be a default on the national debt and other federal payments. The country hit a debt ceiling, currently $30 trillion in January. Since then, the U.S. Department of Treasury has been able to shift money around and delay the so-called X date, the day on which the federal government can no longer pay its bills in full. That date may be as soon as June 1st, but a political impasse between Democrats and Republicans means the deal has remained elusive. If the U.S. reaches the X date without a debt ceiling deal, it will be the first time in U.S. history that the federal government has intentionally reneged on the financial promises. This is where the hypotheticals around who gets paid and when starts to come into play. It's likely that the government will pay first investors and financial entities holding U.S. Treasury bonds. These payments to bondholders would be for principal interest. Federal Reserve officials alluded to the likelihood of prioritizing bondholders in a 2011 meeting that followed an earlier debt ceiling episode. Not doing so would trigger a technical default. In other words, the U.S. would default on its debt payments. Experts say that while missing any federal money would likely sow chaos, the scenario of missed payments is what will really cause a financial crisis. And according to CNBC, U.S. Treasury bonds are the foundation of the whole global structure. The market is for Treasury bonds worth about $24 trillion. It's the largest bond market in the world, and they are held by all sorts of global investors, like the U.S. and foreign banks, insurers, and retirement funds. All federal payments are on the table. Delays may initially last a day or two, but would grow along the duration of political impasse. The most consequential will likely be Social Security benefits and money for health programs like Medicare and Medicaid. For example, the government is scheduled to pay roughly $100 billion each to Medicare and Social Security in June. It dwarfs other federal payment categories. Deferring payments to federal health programs might mean, for example, that some health care providers delay care for enrollees. Retirees who may be living on fixed incomes are going to have trouble paying their bills.
Economists look at a measure of inflation that ignores food and energy prices, and they call it core inflation. That's about the lowest amount in several months. When you couple that with last week's booming jobs report of 528,000 jobs created last month and 3.5% unemployment, it underscores the kind of economy we've been building. We're seeing a stronger labor market where jobs are booming and Americans are working, and we're seeing some signs that inflation may be beginning to moderate. That's what happens when you build an economy from the low.
Though in an official statement, the lawmakers that support the bill have confirmed that the proposal is going to be different. Instead of federal level relief funds, it'll come from the state's general funds. According to state officials, individuals with a household income of $80,000 or less can apply for a one-time state tax exempted payment of up to $2,000 per household. With rising inflation and gas prices, the fourth round of federal level stimulus has been a big topic of discussion in the last few months. It was just last month when the Biden administration announced that it was considering two options as the official stimulus plan in response to rising gas prices. In May, Delaware began sending relief rebate payments of $300 to taxpayers who filed a return in 2020 due to a budget surplus. Most Delaware residents received these payments in May, and couples filing jointly can get $300 each. The state government is continuing to send these payments throughout the summer, and last month, Ron DeSantis of Florida announced that 59,000 low-income families in the state will qualify for a one-time check of $450 per child. The stimulus is being distributed through the Florida Department of Children and Families to residents. Governor Kemp of Georgia signed legislation to give out rebate payments of $250 for single filers, $375 for head of households, and $500 for those filing jointly. The stimulus package came under the budget surplus in the state, and the Georgia Department of Revenue has been giving out these rebates since May. But the agency has been also anticipating delays due to the amount of refunds. Folks, the IRS has just released a very important announcement in regards to future relief payments. Democrats and Republicans in Congress are now addressing Social Security with new legislation this month. Many economists and lawmakers are now pushing for a $1,400 one-time stimulus check for seniors to be passed as soon as possible. Americans are pessimistic about the future of Social Security, and the crisis has made it even worse. A recent survey found that 59% of people now worry more about Social Security running out of funding than they did before the onset of the crisis, and that has changed their outlook on one of the biggest decisions that they will make in their lives, when they claim Social Security retirement benefits. Almost 1 in 5 survey respondents said the crisis has changed their plans to file for Social Security benefits, with 9% planning to file earlier and 11% delaying filing. Yet a recent Social Security Trustees annual report that was the first to consider the effects of the crisis struck a slightly more optimistic tone. The report projected a new depletion date of 2035 for the program's funds, 1 year later than had been projected in 2021. Assuming Congress takes no action in intervening years, at that time, 80% of benefits will be payable.
Fashionable, we might offend some wealthy campaign contributors. But today, obscenely, you got 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You have the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 92%. You have 45% of all new income going to the 1%. And you got CEOs of major corporations making 350 times more than average workers. In other words, the people in the middle, working people, struggling, people on top doing phenomenally well, and the people on the top have enough money to elect candidates who represent their interests. And that is the overall context, in my view, in which this reconciliation bill is coming to the floor. Now, I have heard from some of my colleagues that the Build Back Better legislation passed by the U.S. House of Representatives and supported by some 48 out of 50 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus and by the President of the United States is dead, not going anywhere. Can't get the 50 votes that is needed. Now, I don't know if that